Listen closely for a second. There's a sound, a texture, a feeling we all know. It's the signature of perfectly fried food. But what if the machine we trust to deliver it is hiding a secret? Let's get into it. It all starts with the sound. That sharp, almost glassy crackle when you take the first bite. Then you have the look, a perfect, totally uniform golden brown crust that just promises an incredible texture. And finally, the reveal, that tiny little cloud of steam that escapes when you break it open, showing a soft, fluffy inside. Now, this is what we expect from fried food, but an air fryer, well, that's where the mystery really begins. One shatters, the other, it just crunches. So what is actually happening inside that machine? I mean, if it's not truly frying, how does it manage to trick our eyes so well? How can it possibly create something that looks so golden and crisp while technically not frying at all? This is the big question we're diving into. If you've ever used an air fryer, you know the results can be, well, a little inconsistent. Sometimes it's amazing, but other times the food is kind of uneven, maybe a bit dry. It looks fried, but the bite is just different. And let me tell you, that is not your imagination. Okay, let's put them side by side. A deep-fried fry shatters. It's rich and it's consistent. An air-fried one, though, it has a lighter crunch, but that often comes with a drier, kind of patchier result. So if both methods are using high heat, what's causing this huge difference? Temperature alone can't be the whole story here. To solve this mystery, we have to look past that golden brown color. The real evidence, the thing that tells us what's really going on, appears in the first few seconds of cooking. And it all comes down to bubbles. You see, when food hits hot oil, the surface just erupts in this violent burst of bubbles. But those aren't just for show. That is evidence. That's all the water trapped inside the food rapidly turning into steam and making a run for it. This super fast dehydration of the surface is precisely what builds that perfect crispy crust. So here's the key takeaway. Crispiness isn't something you add to food. It's something you create by taking water away from the surface and doing it fast. The whole goal is to build a dry, brittle shell on the outside before the inside loses all its moisture and gets tough. It really is a delicate balancing act. And this right here is the core difference. Hot oil is like a full contact heat bath. It's touching everything, all at once. Hot air, on the other hand, is more like a powerful hot wind. It's strong, for sure, but it doesn't have that same all-encompassing contact. You can just picture how this plays out, right? Oil slips into every tiny crack, and it hugs every single curve, transferring heat with incredible efficiency. This builds that crust really fast, sealing in the moisture. But air just flows around the food, only drying out the parts it can directly hit. It takes longer, and while the outside is slowly drying, the inside is also losing moisture. And that is how you get food that's crisp, but also kind of dry. So every single piece of food inside that basket is in this state of conflict. The outside needs to become dry, brittle, and golden. Meanwhile, the inside needs to stay soft, tender, and steamy. It's literally trying to become two completely different foods at the exact same time. Okay, so let's run a quick little visual experiment. We'll take 3 identical strips of potato. One gets deep fried, the classic way. The second one goes into the air fryer, completely dry. And for the third, we'll give it just a very thin coating of oil before it goes into the air fryer. So before we see what happens, what's your guess? Can a tiny little bit of oil really make that much of a difference when it's still just being cooked by hot air? And the answer is a definite yes. The oiled fry gets so much closer. You see, that thin layer of oil helps the hot air transfer its energy way more evenly across the surface. It helps with browning, and it helps form a more complete, more satisfying crust. It's kind of the strange secret of air frying. The best results often come from adding back a little bit of the very thing it was designed to replace. And this brings us to the single biggest mistake people make with air frying. When you overcrowd the basket, the hot air just can't circulate. So all that moisture escaping from the food gets trapped between the pieces. Instead of crisping up in dry hot air, the food just ends up steaming itself. And steaming is the absolute enemy of crunch. But here's where the story takes a really fascinating turn. It's a paradox that seems to defy all logic, and it's hiding in plain sight, right in the freezer aisle. I mean, it's a totally fair question. Why is it that frozen fries from a bag sometimes turn out better in an air fryer than the fresh potatoes you just cut yourself? Shouldn't fresh always win? Well, not necessarily, because that frozen fry might just be a masterpiece of food engineering. See, a lot of frozen foods aren't just raw ingredients waiting for you to cook them. They are highly engineered structures. They've often been blanched to control their moisture content. Sometimes they're even partially fried or coated in a thin layer of oil, and they're even shaped to maximize airflow. The manufacturer has already done all the hard work of building the perfect structure for crisping. Your air fryer isn't really cooking from scratch. It's just finishing a process that began in a factory. So when you hear that satisfying crunch, I want you to remember this brilliant quote. Crispiness is a tiny architectural failure happening in your mouth. What you're hearing is the sound of that carefully constructed outer shell finally breaking. The crust shatters, and our brain interprets that sudden collapse as the perfect crunch. So, you see, the problem isn't the machine, it's the name. An air fryer isn't a tiny deep fryer. It's a small but very powerful convection oven. And once you start thinking of it as an oven that uses aggressive wind instead of a fryer that uses oil, that's when you can start using it to its absolute full potential. And that leads to these 5 simple rules, which are really all about surface management. 1. Give your food space to fight off that trapped steam. 2. Use a thin oil coating to help the surface heat up evenly. 3. Pat wet foods dry to give that browning a head start. 4. Shake or flip the food halfway through to make sure everything gets exposed to that hot wind. And 5. Choose shapes with more edges and more surface area. It all comes down to helping the hot air do its job. And that's really the whole story. One method builds a crust using the full immersive contact of oil. The other uses the force of superheated wind. They can both get you to a golden, crisp destination. They just take very different paths to get there. So the next time your air-fried food looks the part but has a slightly different bite, remember, it's not a failure on your part or the machine's. It's just physics. You're not tasting a lesser version of fried food, you're tasting a completely different cooking process. And that is why food works.